goes live in 2 minutes. Lynn Cullen live in 1 minute. Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com. Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com.
Why, look at that. A blue sky for a second or two.
Yeah.
Followed by
right between weather fronts.
Angry black clouds.
Yes.
It's Chris Potter. It's Wednesday. It's the penultimate day of February 2013. Correct?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
It is. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. And I must say, I didn't get a lot of sleep last night, so do I say that a lot?
No, not particularly.
Oh, I think I do.
No,
okay.
Not to me, anyway.
Okay, well, that's good.
Maybe you sleep better just knowing I'll be here tomorrow morning. Maybe that's what it is.
Ain't that the truth?
Was it a party next door or something? Or just
no, we don't even want to discuss it.
Oh, okay. I've been up since 4:45 today.
Oh,
so.
you're
And I was woken up by this. Not seepy, not seepy, not seepy.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
So, I'm seepy.
Yeah.
So, Chuck Hagel got confirmed as defense secretary. So, will somebody tell me
what the hell that was all about?
Yeah, why do the Republicans, when are they going to stop it? I mean, it's so... I mean, even if you're only vaguely paying attention, you know that it's like they're having tantrums all the time. It's like if you were in the two-year-old room at the preschool.
Yeah.
And they're
actually the 2-year-old room is better run, at least at our daycare. So yeah.
But when will they stop this constant? I guess they won't. I guess they won't. They can't.
On a sort of macro level, you'd think you'd want to kind of keep your powder dry for the battles that meant something, right?
Exactly right. As a parent, that's a good parenting thing. I'll keep my powder dry for the battles that matter.
Like the fork in the electrical outlet, for example.
Yeah, exactly. Or when they get older, the one I did is when my son decided to grow his hair down to his waist and never comb it for 2 years.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
No, I was that way myself.
Yeah,
I thought,
and I had to remind myself, you were a child of the '60s.
Yes, right.
Hair is just a thing you do, and hair can be cut, yes, but hair will grow back, yes, hair will change, yes. Don't fight him on this. Let it be.
Is that a line from a song? Hair is just a thing you do. It seems like.
You think?
I'm gonna let my freak flag fly or something. I don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah, no, but I think in this particular case, a lot of it was coming from Lindsey Graham.
What's happened to him?
Because here's the problem with Lindsey Graham is he's actually, yes, and he has actually intermittently demonstrated a certain common sense approach to selected issues, and this cannot be forgiven.
So when's he up for reelection?
This next year. He's coming into it. So he's worried about a Tea Party thing.
All right, sure.
And so he's basically been asking like John McCain and some of these other guys to climb out onto the plank with him, so he gets to stand up for this cause and hopefully, stick it to Obama a little bit. And I mean, it's just, although it did, I have to say, I think it was either last week or the week before where you read me that story about the guy who inadvertently planted Friends of Hamas story. Yeah. I mean, it might have been worth a filibuster just to kind of peel back that layer and see how things really work over there. The big thing now is that guy who reported that totally bogus story was like, he's been on Fox News since then, and
he's treated a hero to them?
Yeah, he's been treated as a serious, reputable journalist.
You mean it? Wait a minute. Something that should have absolutely destroyed his journalism career.
Not only didn't affect it, may even have helped to boost it.
It helped it.
Yeah, that's what these guys do. They always double down. They always double down. And why not? Because at this point, you're such a small. I mean, you have now lost the majority of the electorate. So I guess the only thing you can do is appeal harder and harder to the people who are already on your side, who actually don't really care what the facts are.
Yeah.
So
but what are they thinking? Did you see this poll? These polls. Some extraordinary percentages of Americans. 62% of Americans say the Republican Party is out of touch.
Yeah.
That's 2/3 of the American people.
Almost, yeah. And figure if you subtract Republicans out of that number, independents, and just if you just look at independents, it has to be higher almost. I would think. That's amazing.
No, it's like, I mean, you're watching a party commit suicide.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, it's assisted suicide, though, isn't it? Because there's a lot of money coming in. A lot of the money that they get is from these crazy billionaires, who goad them and reward them for their craziness. So, in some ways, what are the economic incentives? That's kind of what interests me. Is you and I are looking at it like, well, why wouldn't you want to win the election? But in a way, they have a much more immediate set of incentives. They're gerrymandered to a point where they now just have everything they do, the money they get, the votes they get, everything they do is about catering to this one particular group, and so they can't really expand their base because they're so busy catering to the base they already have, and that base is so unforgiving. It's what's really remarkable. That's why Lindsey Graham has to do this crazy stuff, which is utterly meaningless. It's pointless.
Well, that brings us to this sequester, which I guess kicks in 2 days.
Yeah.
And the Republicans are absolutely, again, this is they're letting it happen. And somebody wrote a piece about how, what's going to be interesting here is when the impact of this will be greatest in Republican states.
Right.
Because Republican states, and we've talked about this a million times, get the lion's share of federal funds.
Right.
Even as they rail against them. Their economies are absolutely dependent on federal monies. Maybe this will wake a few of them up.
I mean, this could be a useful object lesson.
It might be, but they seem incapable of learning.
Not that I want to deny thousands of Pennsylvania kids a chance to have Head Start education or federally funded vaccines. I mean, those are important things. You'd hate to sacrifice kids just to teach these people how stupid they are, but look on the bright side.
Okay, so I mean, this guy focused on one of the reddest states, Utah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Utah.
Yeah.
I mean, they went something like 70% for Romney.
Those self-reliant Mormons.
Those self-reliant Mormons, exactly.
Uh-huh.
What is the largest employer in the state of Utah?
The Mormon Tabernacle Choir.
The federal government.
Dun, dun, dun. Oh, yeah, because of all the federal lands and stuff out there.
Because 2/3 of the state is federal land.
Yeah,
so the Bureau of Land Management and other federal agencies are huge economic forces in the state.
Right.
And let us not forget the military.
Yep.
There's an Air Force base there that employs 34,000 people.
Right.
Let's see. There's it's just. There's a regional IRS processing facility that employs another 5,000. This is Utah. And their Senator Orrin Hatch is quoted as saying, I am for sequestration. He's actually...
Do people in Utah have Southern accents like that?
But I always use that.
Also, he's from here originally, is he not?
Yeah, he is.
Okay, I'm sorry. Anyway, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, if I could do a good Pittsburgh accent, I would do that. He said, "I'm for sequestration. We've got to face the music now." Does he know what he's talking about?
I don't know. I guess he must.
No, he doesn't.
I mean, he's been around long enough.
And he used to be somebody who was sometimes reasonable.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. It's a systematic derangement of these guys. It is remarkable. I mean, I have to say there was a piece of the Times the New York Times the other day that I thought was pretty interesting in the sense that what it said is there used to be a time when, and the premise of the sequester, remember, was these cuts were so terrible for both parties that neither party could ever conceive of actually doing it, and the cudgel for Republicans is supposed to be the military spending because that's the one government program they always love.
And they say this is where Obama miscalculated.
Yes, because I think a lot of us were slow to sort of realize the extent to which
the same Republican Party.
These
they don't care about the military.
Yeah.
These particular guys, they don't care.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing about Hagel. Again, it's all on the table. If you cared about the military, if you put country first, is what they always claim to do. If you care about country first, why are you jamming up the Department of Defense and leaving it without a leader for weeks at a time to prove some ridiculous point when from day one it was clear he was eventually going to be...
So more of them are now these Tea Party, don't spend a penny of my money Republicans.
Yeah.
And so the Republicans that we used to think of as like the Chamber of Commerce Republicans, business Republicans, they actually are outnumbered now. They are not in control.
I mean, you've seen that in a lot of individual elections, certainly. Yeah. So, and you're seeing this go on with Karl Rove, and
this is what happens when you cynically get into bed with people you don't really agree with, but you figure you can manipulate. And guess what? I guess you figured it wrong because they took over all those hordes. The great unwashed, with the tea bag earrings and wearing their American flags. They took over.
Tea bag earrings, yep.
Yeah.
No, I've seen it. Yeah, it's all.
Okay. Wow. So anyway, it's just depressing. And the Post-Gazette acts like Toomey is going to help save the nation.
Oh yeah.
Big headline: as sequester nears, Toomey
offers way out. Which is actually really misleading. I think. Totally. Because that suggests that cuts won't happen. That he's proposed something that makes the cuts not happen, and in fact,
he just allows he
just wants to give the president a bit more leeway to decide exactly how they'll fall. Which would
be better.
It would be, and that again is a sign of how deranged his party. Toomey just got high marks from the Club for Growth
for
just
being
yesterday.
One of the most conservative.
Members
of the Congress,
and yet he can't even get support from his own party for this thing because a lot of them think we not only have to do this, we have to do it in the stupidest way possible.
That's apparently. Right. So, oh dear. Meanwhile,
dun dun.
Let's move down the street a little bit and head to the Supreme Court of the United States of America, which today will be sitting in its august surroundings, hearing arguments about whether or not Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act has outlived its usefulness and, in fact, should be thrown out. The Supreme Court has heard this argument. Let me see how many times. This is something that the Republicans have been trying to get done for about 1 million years.
Because they're against judicial activism.
Right! Ever since the Voting Rights Act was passed in 1965, I believe, right?
Yeah.
So they have gotten this argument up to the Supreme Court In 1966, they tried to knock it out.
Yeah, that makes sense. If you're going to challenge it, you do it right after it passes.
Then they waited till the makeup of the court changed a little bit. In 73, they came back.
Yep.
Argued that this is unnecessary, blah, blah, blah. Obviously, they keep coming back because the Supreme Court keeps saying, no, no, we need it. They waited for 7 years after they were rebuffed in 73. They come back in 1980 when, Ronald Reagan's president, and I'm trying to figure out, I think the court maybe looked a little bit better to them. They try it in 80. Nah, they get thrown out again. And then last time they did it was 1999. They waited almost 20 years, 99, and they're rebuffed again.
Right.
Well, today is their fifth. Yeah, it's their fifth go round.
Yep.
And you know what?
That'll probably work.
They're going to get it.
Yeah.
They're going to get it. You know why? Because this court, as you know, is as partisan and conservative and activistic as any court in my lifetime. And in fact, the Chief Justice of the court is on record as saying, quote, "Things have changed in the South." He thinks it's like the Garden of Eden for racial harmony.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's probably going to go down. And what that section is that's the one that does not allow a whole bunch of states and some parts of other states to change their voting laws without oversight from the federal government.
Right. And the irony of this, too, is that same Chief Justice, when he was before the Senate, talked quite a bit about respecting existing legal precedent.
I know.
He just this
he was not going to be but he was just a referee?
That's right, just an umpire.
I'm an
just
umpire.
calling balls and strikes. It's not your job. And I mean, this is the point, right? This is exactly why that concept, and I'm just completely blanking on what the Latin phrase is. I apologize. But this idea of let the decision stand. If there are decisions, previous court decisions, you let them stand in part to prevent exactly this kind of judge shopping where you just bring this thing up every few years and just test the waters over and over again. There ought to be something, granted the law has to, the law does have to change and evolve, but this notion that you're going to come back 5 times over the course of, 40 years and just keep rolling the dice like our justice system is a casino.
But here's what's interesting. The court has to accept a case.
Yes.
So that means that the Supreme Court accepted essentially the same case 5 times. Why would they do that? Why would they say, "Hey, look"? When does law become sort of settled? For God's sake?
I think to accept a case, you need the votes of 4 justices.
Oh well, see, they got 5.
So yeah, I don't know the whole history of there may have been different challenges. Certainly, you can imagine why they would accept that case in 1966. I mean that makes sense. After it's a sweeping new law, it makes sense for it to get some judicial review. I can't speak to all those other instances or whatever, but yeah, it only takes 4 justices to get a.
Well, I would even argue that Section 5 is not broad enough, and that in fact it should extend, obviously, to the great state of Pennsylvania, which has clearly shown that it intends to disenfranchise minorities.
Yeah, but if I were going to argue this case, that's like one of the points I'd make. Right? I mean, what was Section 5? Section 5 was created to deal with a particularly Southern legacy. Well, I mean, if you can argue that states north of the Mason-Dixon line engage in the same or worse behavior, you could say, what's the rational distinction then? I would. Well, then maybe. So that would be awesome, wouldn't it? If in Tom Corbett's Pennsylvania, we become the state that Mississippi can go, yeah, well, look at those guys.
But that's true. But it's true.
We're amateurs at this stuff. You want the real voter suppression, you got to go up the turnpike.
Damn. Ain't that the truth? But that brings us to the question of whether or not the Attorney General of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, who is charged with defending the laws of the state, if they should be challenged, will defend our new voting ID law, because she said when she was running for Attorney General that she thought it was unconstitutional. So now she's in a bit of a bind. It can be gotten out of. I mean, she can say, I won't and then they turn it over to general counsel or
to the governor's office.
Okay.
When the office of attorney general became an elected office, and this came up when Corbett decided to sue the NCAA under his own office rather than under the attorney general.
That's right.
And it was essentially because he got leave to do that by Kane's sort of interim predecessor. The governor has his own legal office that was created when they created the attorney general as a separate elected position that said if the attorney general, if you're in an adversarial position or there are these various circumstances. So the state could continue to defend this law. And let's recall that there was legal representation from the governor's office arguing this thing last year. So it would not be unprecedented, but it would be very interesting, I think, for her to take that step. I actually have some misgivings. I mean, I'm against the voter ID thing. It's ridiculous.
You don't think it's unconstitutional?
I don't know whether it's unconstitutional or not. What I have misgivings about, to some extent, I'm going to sound a bit like a Republican here, is when public officials sort of pick and choose the responsibilities that they want to execute. And I've seen this happen. There's been some similar stuff out in California or whatever. And I just imagine if the situation were reversed.
Wait a minute. Okay. But
so for example, let's say we had a rule. Let's say a year from now, under some crazy set of circumstances, we have gay marriage in the state of Pennsylvania. Let's say that happens. Somebody sues to overturn that, but we end up with some conservative jackanape as the attorney general who says, I'm not going to defend Pennsylvania's law because I personally just don't agree with it. I just don't hold with it. I don't think it's right.
I see.
So there, that sword tends to cut both ways sometimes. And so I do have some concern about that precedent.
Well, didn't we have a similar thing happen recently with the Defense of Marriage Act?
Yes. Yeah. In fact, at the federal level,
At the federal level.
Yes. And of course, that's what's somewhat different there is that the attorney general is an administration appointee. It's a part of the executive branch, as not a standalone.
Okay. So that's a case, too, that is before the court in this term. And that's a federal law signed into law by Bill Clinton.
Right.
And the Obama administration thinks it's unconstitutional.
So in that case, I believe Congress is now allocating the money and paying for somebody to do that, which I don't even quite understand how that works. But yeah, in this, so it's weird. I mean, I totally understand where she's coming from. I mean, she basically feels this law is not constitutional, and
why would you want somebody defending your law if they really didn't believe it? I mean, you could
because that would be the worst thing,
job.
right? That would, in some ways, and that's what I think is sort of interesting about Pennsylvania's situation. Would you rather have Tom Corbett's office, and clearly he's a believer in it, defending this law, or would you rather have somebody who has kind of misgivings and maybe she doesn't quite put all of her muscle into it? This actually might be better. In this particular limited case, for the proponents of voter ID.
Well, a lot of interesting stuff if you're into watching the judicial end of our governance.
Yeah, absolutely.
We got to take a break because I've got
on the 20s
the break police here today, and I aim to do it absolutely correctly. Okay, but I cannot be, you
cannot be held responsible for this.
Right,
You made a good faith effort.
That's right. Caller, go ahead.
How you doing?
Fine, Thank you.
Hey, did either one of you see that Catherine, I think it's Kane?
Yeah, that's what we're talking about.
Yesterday.
Yeah, the Attorney
She was
General.
talking about gun control and all that.
No.
I'll tell you what, that woman's a sharp woman. I look for her to be maybe governor of Pennsylvania someday, or even running for president. I think she's got what it takes.
Okay,
Have a good day.
Yeah.
Chris Matthews had her on Hardball the other day.
You know what? Usually women that good looking in politics are Republicans. I'm serious.
Present company excluded, of course.
No. Republicans often have these babes that get elected.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And Democrats have women, the regular, ordinary women.
This is sounds like I heard Rush Limbaugh say this 3 weeks ago. There are a lot of Democratic hotties out there. I refer you to my wife.
I'm talking about elected.
Oh, I see. Yeah, okay.
I mean, Kane is a babe, right?
She does have that. She does have that Law and Order thing going for her.
Yeah. And and I think there's little doubt that she intends to run for.
And she's clearly a hero to Democrats. I mean, there's no question. Right now, her stock could not be higher.
Right.
Within her own party.
Right. I wasn't for her in the primary.
No, I had misgivings too. Yeah.
Doing okay.
Yeah. Can't complain.
Bill Clinton told you she was going to be okay. But of course, Bill was like,
I'm sure he was.
and I'm for Kathleen Kane.
Oh, poor guy.
Okay, we got to take a break.
Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com or call Lynn at 412-316-3381. Lynn Cullen Live will return in a moment.
Pittsburgh City Paper is available now. Pick up one today for our special summer camps preview section. Plus, Britt Floyd, Indigo Girls, Black Grace, and Tenacious D. Pittsburgh City Paper available at over 1,700 locations throughout Western Pennsylvania and on the web at pghcitypaper.com and on your smartphone at citypapermobile.com.
Here at the GED Pep Talk Center, we've got a pep talk that can motivate you.
Sometimes things don't always turn out the way you want them to.
You can improve your future. Now get your game face on and take the first step towards a better life. Hurry up. Don't make me repeat myself.
Whatever level of motivation you need, we've got a pep talk for you. Call 1-877-38-YOUR-GED or visit yourged.org for your pep talk and for free classes in your area. GED is a registered trademark of the American Council on Education. Brought to you by Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Now, it's back to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com.
Well, hello. Hey, so Potter, yesterday there was this article, I forget where it was, but it talked about how research has shown that if you smile, if your mouth, if the muscles engaged in the act of smiling, that when that happens, it heads out to your brain and then releases, like endorphins and all these nice things. You feel better when you're smiling.
Right.
And that even when you see someone smile, the mirror effect creates often the same kind of thing. So smiles are a good thing, what it amounts to. Yeah. Stress levels go down, blah, 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 all this kind of stuff. So after I said that, I'm standing at the bus stop yesterday after the show, and I was in my standing at the bus stop, face.
What's that look like?
I don't think it looks very good. I think it's neutral.
Okay.
But I think the older I get, my neutral face is looking a little down.
More antagonistic.
Down, because, everything is going down.
It's your neutral, don't talk to me crazy person face?
Yeah, right.
Is that,
I'm just sitting here.
Right.
And then I thought about the article, and I thought, you can just put a pleasant, slightly upturned,
Right. Now you're the crazy person on the bus.
It was amazing. It was amazing how much work it took for me to sustain this sort of just slight upturn to my mouth. I'm not on the bus yet. I'm waiting, but I'm like this, and then I'm thinking, do I look weird? Yeah. Or do I just look like a pleasant lady? And I thought, no, I bet I look like a pleasant lady who feels... No!
Jess thinks you look crazy. What's great is a smile is supposed to be reducing stress, but you're getting progressively more stressed out about whether you look like some lunatic old broad waiting for the bus, just back from a lithium treatment or something like that.
Well, I did. I gave up.
Yeah, there's a slight Jack Nicholson thing going on there.
Oh, man. But I remember another saying that said it takes, I forget the number of muscles to smile and the number of muscles to frown. And strangely, I think they said it took more muscles to frown.
Is that right?
But it doesn't seem like it.
No.
That seems easy.
Right. Well, for you. You just had more exercise.
Because gravity would play a part, wouldn't it? Because frowning is all down.
I don't know.
And smiling is, you have to pull things up.
Yeah.
Anyway, I just thought I'd let you know that.
Thanks. All right. Give that some thought, waiting for my ride home tonight.
Oh, okay. So here's the other thing. I was loving last week with, another shoe dropping every 2 seconds with the and then all of a sudden, it's dried up.
Well,
so what's
the nature
happening?
of these things to ebb and flow.
Okay, so nothing's happening now.
Let me think about that. Is nothing happening? No, we have a story this week actually that raises this question, and it's about
is the mayor clear?
Yeah, is the mayor in the clear or not? He went before reporters and said about 15 times, "I'm not a target
of the investigation."
Right, which if you kind of Google the phrase "I'm not a target," it actually tends to get spoken of a lot by politicians in difficult circumstances, and it is true that generally speaking, a politician who tells you that they've been told they're not a target, it is more likely than not that they will never be charged. But we also have a former FBI agent with like a couple decades of experience in white collar and public corruption cases. Saying,
you mean that you interviewed?
That Charlie Deitch, our news editor, interviewed, who basically said, look, you may not be a target when you walk in. You may be a target when you walk out or the next day or whenever. I mean, we can change our minds about that stuff. There are some consequences to if you tell somebody they're not a target and then you ask them questions and they discuss, things, and then you go back and charge them, you can kind of hamstring your investigation a little bit because you've basically, in some ways, you've kind of anti-Mirandized them. You haven't really told them that what they say, you know what I mean?
Right.
So that's a kind of thing that can come up in subsequent legal proceedings, but it doesn't. Beyond that, it doesn't necessarily mean a hell of a lot. What's interesting is, and I was surprised by this. I helped out with this story a little bit, and I've been at some political events in the past week or so, and I've been surprised at the extent to which people have been. When people heard him say I'm not a target, they took that at face value. They just said, "Oh, so it's not about him." And I had people.
What do you say? Who took that at face value?
Voters I was talking to, people who were interested, people who were following the race, just said, "Oh, well, it's not about him. It seems to be about this stuff going on in the police department, and he's not a subject of the investigation." So, what he did, it worked. He got up there and he said, "I'm not a target" 10 times, and there's a significant number of people out there
who now think he's not a target.
Who think he's not a target. One of the interesting things, and Charlie pointed this out in his piece, is the extent to which when he first got up and started talking in this press conference, the extent to which he really made it sound like, just in terms of his word choice and stuff like that, really made it sound like he'd sort of been called in for a briefing to give him a heads up.
That's what I was thinking.
And it's this line he says, which is, it's one of those things that's true when it's factually true. All the words add up to a true statement, but the result of it is a little confusing. Yeah, and he says, please understand, I can't discuss this, the nature and the status of this investigation. I can't jeopardize the investigation, which is the kind of thing we're also used to hearing from people who are actually doing the investigation, not people who are being interviewed and questioned by the investigators.
Right.
And I think to a large extent, the power of first impressions, and I think, to a large extent, that worked, and in a way, reporters didn't really challenge him on that as hard as they might have. There was a reporter who did say, "Well, they didn't call you in to tell you what was up. They called you in to ask you questions, right?" "Oh yeah, they asked me questions." So there was a bit of that, but I think he handled that. Looking back, like a week after the fact, his handling of that press conference was pretty slick.
Interesting. So, playing out publicly now, in terms of the partisan politics involved, in terms of the fact that he is in a primary race to retain his seat, do you see you think Lamb and or Peduto have handled this well, or have made any?
I think they've done it. Lamb especially has been very sharply critical. It's actually been a little interesting.
Well, he's in a position, as the
controller, and what's sort of interesting is the extent to which Ravenstahl's people have pushed back on that. And what they've sort of said is, well, if there was all this, where were you?
Where were you before all this?
Which is kind of, if you really sort of think about that, it's kind of an odd thing to say, right? It's like killing your parents and going before the court and pleading for mercy because you're an orphan. It's just sort of like, well, why didn't you catch all this crap we were up to, or that was taking place on our watch?
Your job was
you were the guy who was supposed to tell us when we were doing something that wasn't right. It's a bit self-serving there, but I mean, I think as a way of sort of throwing off people and trying to sort of distract from the issue and sort of pushing some blame off onto somebody else. Again, I think the mayor's office has pushed that line pretty hard and not without success. There was a story in the Tribune Review yesterday that I thought was that I know Mr. Lamb was not happy with. But, I thought certainly the mayor's people would be happy about, we told him about this months ago, and he said he didn't have the staff to look into this. You know what I mean? It was that kind of piece. So, we'll see. I mean, Peduto, it's been interesting. Peduto has certainly been, talking in various forums about, people need to connect the dots and look at this as sort of a, there's a history of heads of departments leaving under a cloud, and then once they go, kind of the questions go with them. And yet, this has happened now in a couple of different, it's happened at the Water and Sewer Authority, it's happened at the URA, and now it's happened at the Bureau of Police. What's the one thing all these agencies have in common?
They'd be Luke Ravenstahl.
Yeah, so that's the argument he's making, but it's I haven't seen him call press conferences or issue these press statements the way that Lamb has. So it's been interesting to watch them handle it. But you got to walk. I think you kind of have to walk a bit of a fine line with it, as Lamb has learned. So I think they're probably doing about as well as they can to keep the issue alive. I just think sooner or later, these stories kind of ebb and flow. I mean, what I think for the Ravenstahl administration, the biggest problem they have is this reminds people of all the stuff,
all the bad
that gives
stuff.
them, that just makes them doubt
that he's up to the job.
The city's doing okay. There's visible signs of progress. Buildings are being constructed. All this stuff is happening, and yet there was just that period for those first few years where it just felt like every time you picked up the paper, and then it went quiet, and then there was another spate of stuff. It's Snowmageddon, and he's at the ski lodge, or it's he's taking SUVs to Toby Keith. There's just this feeling that you don't quite have the full sense of what that guy is doing.
He's not quite serious.
Right, when your back is turned, when the cameras are off. And I think the problem is that plays into this uncertainty that people have.
Well, but it's still, even if it did play into the uncertainty, the fact is that the anti-Ravenstahl vote will be split between the two challengers. Yeah. Stupid! If it was just one of them, you could knock him off.
Maybe. I mean, but she didn't. That assumes that all Peduto voters would be Lamb voters, and vice versa. And I don't know that that's 100% true. I just don't.
Really?
There are people who would vote for Lamb who probably would not vote for Peduto, and vice versa. I've met these folks. I've talked to them. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
So their dislike of Peduto
Plus, if
Lamb is
Ravenstahl's
greater
that bad, why shouldn't he finish third? Right? That's what I say. I think, this whole thing. Look, there's nothing we can do about it. Both these guys are in the race. Neither one of them is going to get out at this point. And, if Ravenstahl is as horrible as both of these guys say they are, he should finish third. It should be a race between Peduto and
Lamb. But that presupposes that the public, the voters, are paying attention.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
It does.
So
but then,
you built that whole thing on a totally faulty premise.
No, I'm just saying. But then isn't that the issue, really?
Yes. Doesn't it always come back to us?
Yeah, it does. That's what a democracy is.
That's what I'm saying. When we hate the Congress like we hate the Congress, sorry, guys, they all ended up there because Americans voted for them.
Yeah.
So I think it's very confusing that the Pope that leaves tomorrow is still going to be called...
Oh, what is he going to be called? I don't know.
Well, they figured
Pope
it
Emeritus?
out. No, he's going to be called... he'll be called Benedict the 16th, and he'll be the Roman Pontiff Emeritus, or Pope Emeritus. Stop it. He will wear a white cap. Some people thought he would get back into black, like a priest.
Because it's a better look for him? Oh, I see, yeah.
Is it? No, they say he's going to keep the white papal robe with the white capelet that ends at the elbow.
Holy mackerel.
Oh, yeah. The only thing that changes is he's got to turn in the red shoes. I'm not kidding.
How can you do the red shoes are what completes the ensemble? How can you do that?
Know. It's too horrible to contemplate, and they said he's going to have to wear brown shoes.
Oh, Lord of mercy.
It does. It ruins the entire...
You know what people don't realize about those red shoes? They're actually high tops. Just like members of the AVA used to wear back in the 50s or whatever. Now he won't be able to he won't be able to sink the jumper from outside the line. I mean,
all right. So the red shoes.
The Red Shoe Diaries.
They symbolize the blood of the martyrs, and he can't wear them anymore.
Oh dear. See, now I feel bad.
Yeah,
so what do the brown shoes symbolize? Oh dear Lord. I can already hear Ray typing an email like right now.
All right, Ray, we'll stop. Father Lombardi said the Pope had decided on his couture.
Oh, he decided.
I guess so.
See, I would have thought this being the Vatican.
In consultation with other Vatican officials.
Right. Because they've got an office set up for just this kind of thing, right? I mean, it's the Vatican. There's somebody...
Yeah. And he'll stop using his fisherman's ring. It will be destroyed.
Oh, my gosh, really?
Yeah.
But he can still wear his fisherman's cap, right? Yeah. Like Colonel Blake in MASH or whatever. It's going to be a more relaxed Pope, but it has to be white. And now he can't use the Rapala lures. He has to use metal spoons instead.
And he will be and he'll be referred to in the same manner, your excellency, your whatever, the Pope. But the thing is, and he'll be hanging out there at the Vatican.
Right.
And there'll be another Pope wearing white. The only difference will be the red. The one, you have to look at the shoes to see who's who.
That's going to be so awkward.
I think
that's going to be so awkward when they go to the Oscars together and they're both wearing the same outfit. You know what I mean?
Man.
Oh, did you guys call each other up and plan this?
All right.
Papal fashion. I love it.
It is papal fashion.
Yeah, I mean.
But I think this is very odd. I do. And I think if the Pope was going to resign like he did, he needs to go farther away. He needs to and drop the trappings. He does.
Yeah. Like how far do you think he should go?
Well, I think he should have gone to wearing black. Or at least stylish gray tweed. I don't know.
Oh, I thought you meant you meant geographically he should go farther.
No.
Okay.
Well, I think just for his security and stuff, he probably has to stay there.
Sure.
But here's the other odd thing: the priest who is in charge of his sort of daily stuff, who is the papal whatever, is going to continue to serve Benedict.
Yeah, sure.
And the new Pope.
Oh.
Now that strikes me as very odd.
Yeah.
And that guy, whoever that is going to be in a position to, I don't know.
This is the kind of stuff that in the Middle Ages would have ended very, very badly, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the kind of thing that would happen and, popes end up on ropes or whatever. I mean.
Yeah. And then he's heading off to Castle Gandolfo, which is the Pope's, sort of...
Is that where the hobbits live?
Which is the summer residence. It's up in the mountains. Mm-hmm. But so, technically, that's the Pope's summer home.
Right.
So there'll be a new Pope.
Right.
But there'll be somebody in his home.
It'll be like a timeshare. That's really, yeah. And who gets to wear the papal Bermuda shorts at that point?
All right, enough already.
Okay, no, I'm sorry. Okay.
Anyway, look what time it is. It's time for a break.
Yay!
Okay.
Like a well-oiled machine.
Yeah.
Stick around for more with Lynn Cullen Live after this.
Go to bergbargains.com for great deals on museums, shows, and meals from your favorite local restaurants. This week only, get discounts up to 60% on shows at the Opera, Symphony, and City Theater. bergbargains.com, Pittsburgh's best bargains. bergbargains.com.
Packers.
Vikings.
We come from different places.
Uptown.
Downtown.
We come to different conclusions.
Half empty.
Half full.
But when we live united, we make a real difference in the building blocks of life. Children succeed in school, families gain financial stability, the health of our neighbors improves, and suddenly so do our communities. Real change won't happen without you.
Live united.
So give, advocate, volunteer, live united. Sign up today at liveunited.org. Brought to you by United Way and the Ad Council.
Have a question or an opinion? Call Lynn Cullen at 412-316-3381 or email lynn at pghcitypaper.com. Now, more with Lynn Cullen Live.
All right, I'm trying to figure out if there's other things we're supposed to be talking about here. No. Did you watch the Oscars? I heard you mention them.
No, they were on WTAE, which doesn't come in at my house. We still use the little old rabbit ear antennas, and no matter where I've lived, and I've lived
I used
like
to
2
work
miles from there.
I worked at WTAE, and
signal.
there's some weird thing about where their tower is that you can get TAE, in Maryland, but you can't get it in the city.
Yeah, I lived in North Point Breeze, which is literally like 2 miles from where you're from the station itself, and we still couldn't get it.
Isn't that odd?
Yeah, I mean, I missed most of your TV career. I mean,
boy, and you missed something.
I did. I mean, I hear these stories. I never got to see Paul Long with the cigar thing in his head, and
all that stuff.
I never heard Joe say it would, for Christ's sake. What kind of Pittsburgh childhood is that? Anyway, you were saying.
What do you make of that cannibal trial? That's beneath you, huh?
I don't know anything about it, actually. Does this have something to do with the Oscars? Does this have something to do with the Oscars?
No,
oh, okay.
That's how beneath you.
Like, what the hell?
That's how beneath you it is.
No, I wouldn't say
It's a big, big criminal trial going on in federal court. In New York City, involves a New York police officer
who ate people?
Who wanted to. I mean, he was on a fetish website that is a website for men who fantasize about torturing and cooking and eating women.
So that's reprehensible. What's the actual offense? Like, what did he do?
Well, that's what's interesting because I mean, there are people who say they're not going to be able to make this stick. They were trying. I think they're suggesting that he intended to do this. So this is like before the fact, getting him before he does it.
Yeah, this sounds like hitting somebody with a drone for an imminent thing that could happen at any point in the future. A little bit. I mean, I don't know anything about the case, obviously. So,
but when you start looking at
What was the actual charge? Like conspiracy to do something, or?
Well, that's an interesting question. What is the actual charge? They have evidence on his computer showing that he had discussed killing his wife, abducting, torturing, and eating other women. So I don't know what he's charged with.
Yeah, well, that sounds pretty. I mean, that sounds bad. Don't get me wrong. I don't know.
Look at him with his little baby. He looks like such a nice man.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure. He's dubbed the cannibal cop. He says all of this was just harmless fetish fantasies. Mm-hmm. And that no women were ever in jeopardy. But the assistant U.S. attorney said, make no mistake. He was very serious about these plans. His defense attorney says, you can't convict people for their thoughts, even if they're sick. And I think that's true.
Yeah, that's bizarre. Make no mistake.
New York psychologist Tiger DeVore?
Should that be pronounced devour by any chance?
Yeah, right, maybe. He is a certified sex therapist who specializes in sexual dysfunction and fetishes.
Okay.
Said the cannibalism fetish, known as vorophilia, isn't common.
Good.
For most laymen, they're going to think about it as cannibalism. But what it really is an obsession about consuming the flesh of the other. And this can have a whole range of expression. I might argue communion.
Dear me.
Well, stop and think about that.
Yeah, only for those faiths that believe in the literal transubstantiation.
Well.
Yeah, no, that's right. Yeah.
I've often found that interesting that, this is the body, and then you eat it. And how is that not like cannibalism?
Yeah, I once saw a nun. I was visiting St. Anthony's Chapel up in Troy Hill where they have all these old saint
the relics, yeah.
And there was a classroom, obviously from a Catholic school, a class of kids in there, and this nun was just reading them the riot act, and I'm not sure why exactly, but she was just like, I see some of you chewing gum during communion, just think about what you're doing, and it's just like, oh, I didn't think about that. But if that was, if you believed in the literal transubstantiation, that's weird,
It is.
Yeah. So, man, I don't know what to say about that story.
No. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, you'd like to think there would be something that could be done. I just don't know.
So thoughts are not...
That was his wife, you said? Did she get out of the house, I hope? Well,
she's the one who turned him in.
Oh, okay. Oh, well, good.
She went on his computer, saw what he was up to, was stunned, shocked, blah, 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 and freaked.
Yeah.
Because he was talking about her, but he was also talking about other women. He was talking about buying some woman from somebody for $5,000, and she would be delivered. He said, I want her feet tied with no shoes. I don't want her kicking me. Stuff like that.
Yeesh.
It's like,
yeah.
God.
Yeah.
Now, there's apparently tens of thousands of people worldwide who get on this particular website. So how many sickos are there around?
Right.
And they get off by trading these fantasies with each other.
Yeah.
And how many may, in fact, want to...
Well, I mean, that's the... Oh, no! There is an email from Ray here. Oh, boy.
And this is before we mentioned...
Was it? I don't know. Was it? Let's see.
It'd be too close. Lynn, let Potter know I have no intention to dignify his childish braying with any edification or explanation. I will point out I expect nothing else from a Calvinist. I look forward to an equal amount of ridicule and derision the next time the evil English monarchy has one of its pompous ceremonies.
I hope to deliver.
Well done, Ray. Mary has some fashion advice. Red shoes are for children and hookers. Oh, God.
Yeesh. If you are not in one of those categories, then at least...
Don't wear them.
At least not before Memorial Day, people.
I think Mary, I have some red shoes.
Uh-oh.
They're red and black. They're not totally...
Oh,
no, it's sort of red. No, I do have one that's red. Red shoes are for people who are willing to be a little bit out there.
Exactly.
Allison says, when will it stop? And then she answers, never. The Republicans failed in their attempt to make the president a one-term president, so now the goal is just to make him a failed president. They ask for him to give them a plan, for example, immigration, and as soon as he does, the Republicans shout, dead on arrival. But they don't give any alternative. Well, we're going to get a caller.
Oh, we got a call.
Hello?
Hi, Lynn.
Yes. Yes.
Lynn, this whole thing about cannibalism is nonsense. It's not true. They're friendly people. They just want to chew the fat.
What did he say?
He said they're friendly people. They just want to chew the fat.
Oh, man.
See, I was sitting here just scrolling through and just thinking.
Hang on.
Just thinking.
How far?
When he said when the guy said make no mistake, and it was sort of about a guy who wanted to eat women, I was sort of thinking of Miss Steak, and I just couldn't really pull it together. So thank you, caller, for going to that place where I
failed to go.
Dared
not
tread.
Back to, so they asked the president for give us something on immigration. He does, and they shout dead on arrival, but don't give any alternatives of their own. Anything he is for, Congress is against, even if they express favorable opinions of whatever it is before.
Yeah.
And that is true. Also, John Boehner is turning from a functional alcoholic to a dysfunctional one.
Yeah.
He looked particularly red yesterday. I saw him. I mean, that color he is
more red than orange. You mean?
No, it just was so bizarre. It was very dark, much darker than usual.
Yeah,
and
maybe he's cooling. Like a fire goes from yellow to orange to red. Maybe he'll just be a little ember by the end of this Congress.
Allison is really angry. She says Congress is only worried about 535 jobs, their own. and the hell with the 330 million other people in the country.
Yeah.
I think that's good. Recommendation to you and Chris, Billionaires and Bandit Ballots by Greg Palast. And you'll wonder how anyone ever gets elected.
Yeah. Huh. Maybe I will check that out. I will say the one difference I would take was immigration. Actually, the story there is a little more interesting. I generally agree with her that she's true, that they're good at shooting ideas down. Immigration is the one where there's just been this weird thing of Rubio has an immigration plan of his own, and he did say, Obama's is terrible, even though in essence the plans are really, really, really very similar. And there's this theory that essentially Rubio, they have to dump all over Obama's plan for Rubio's plan to get through, because that provides him he has to get some daylight between at least some rhetorical daylight between the president, again, because the Tea Partiers won't want to give Obama a victory. So in a way, she's in that particular issue, it's kind of the exception that proves her rule. There is an alternative, but even when you do have an alternative, you have to gratuitously dump all over the president just to have a deal that your own members can live with. That's the kind of contortion you have to bend into to get anything done.
Unbelievable. So, okay, Margaret writes that Republican women can be hot. However, their husbands are gay.
Honestly, don't know who Margaret's referring to.
I can't imagine who she's referring to there. He does seem gay as if anyone's lighting the loafers, I'd like to know, Mr. Bachman. Jeez. God, seriously.
Poor guy.
Well, okay, so here's something that just pissed me off.
Do tell.
Think of female, used to be, before we women were liberated, there were just a few. I always said there's 3 things we could be. And then somebody said, really 4. Okay, 4. And actually, if you get picky, there's a few others. But you could be a teacher. Mm-hmm. You could be a nurse. Mm-hmm. You could be a secretary.
Yeah. What was the 4th one that somebody suggested to you?
A librarian. Oh. But that's like a teacher to me. Yeah, I'm saying, okay. Yeah. And then obviously, yes, you could work in retail and sell clothes to people or something like that. Mm-hmm. But you really couldn't think beyond that. Hmm. And that was in my lifetime when I actually went off to college. I was thinking, I decided my freshman year to major in education because I don't like blood, so I wasn't going to be a nurse.
Right.
I didn't want to be a secretary, and I did end up being a secretary, and I didn't want to be a teacher. I just didn't know what else you could be.
Right.
Okay. So it's interesting because now when you go to a hospital, God forbid, the nurse might be a man.
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm.
Right? And we started first seeing men, especially around here, during the horrible economic
downturn, disaster, catastrophe,
yeah,
deindustrialization.
Something like that, but I'm still looking for it. When something shrinks, when something...
the contraction.
The contraction. And so all these guys who would have worked in the mills, not all of them, a few of them said, well, heck, I'll go train as a nurse. Right?
Right.
So, here is what is pissing me off.
I can almost guess. Go ahead.
Well, sure you can. 2011, what percentage of nurses were men nationally?
I don't know.
You think?
I have no idea.
Just 10%. 10%.
Oh, 10%.
No,
okay.
it's still pretty low.
Okay.
So your odds of seeing a male nurse are, not that great,
right,
actually. But in 1970, it was 3%.
Okay.
So it's grown quite a bit. Now, the average female nurse in 2011 earned $51,000.
Okay.
$51,100.
That's going to be...
The average male nurse in 2011 earned $60,000.
Wow, 20%.
700.
Wow. And it can't be because they have more experience or anything like that, right? If anything, you would think men would be less time in the field.
Out. Now, Figure that out. So a job always, and to this day, still loses its value when it becomes feminized. When women hold most of those jobs, it doesn't get paid as much. As women move into the clergy, those believe me, they ain't making what the guys used to make.
Right.
I'm trying to think of some other places where we
probably have to buy their own red shoes too.
Yeah, right. It's really, really something. Now, there is. Oh, and here, female nurses, they said this works for part-time or full-time. Female nurses working full-time year-round earn 9% less than male counterparts. Now, they come up with an explanation, because, of course, there's always an explanation, isn't there?
Yeah.
Here it is. Something called the glass escalator. Now, here's what I want to know. How come when we're talking about women moving up, there's a glass ceiling?
Right.
And now we're talking about men moving up and bypassing women in a female profession, and all of a sudden there's no glass ceiling, there's a glass escalator.
So wait, is the escalator going down for women? Is it going up for men?
It's going up for men.
Okay, I got it.
And the glass escalator says that men will earn higher wages and faster promotions, yes, in female-dominated professions. And here's one of the possible reasons. Men entering nursing go for the highest earning segment of nursing, like a nurse anesthesiologist or anesthetist or whatever they're called. And in fact, men make up 41% of nurse anesthetists.
Huh.
They don't call them anesthesiologists because that's the doctor, I guess.
Right.
So and they can earn up to $148,000 a year.
That's interesting. We had a male nurse anesthetist when that kid went in for tubes. Now that I think about it, yeah.
And also, the lowest form of nursing, where the pay is about $35,000, is a licensed practical nurse.
Yeah.
Men only make up 8% of that.
Right.
So the men have gone into it trying to get the biggest bang for their buck. But that doesn't completely explain?
I don't know. I mean, I would say women do seem to be held back by their dunderheaded insistence on caring about other human beings, which
like their children and families?
The state of humanity in general, which doesn't really seem to bother men in quite the same sort of way in my experience. There might be another factor too. And this is not to justify or ratify what seems like a pretty unequal situation, but there is an argument out there, advanced locally by a prominent woman academic, that women don't do a good job of negotiating on their own behalf.
Yes,
and I don't know if that, when it comes to things like salaries, they just don't ask. She wrote a book called "Women Don't Ask," I think was the exact title.
Yes.
So there may be some of that, although you would think that in a large institutional setting like a hospital, there's a pay scale that they had. So I don't know if that's it either. It is
odd.
It is odd. It wouldn't surprise me if that were a factor. It sounds like the numbers do suggest, when you look at these particular subsectors of the industry, that there is a trend there. But yeah, do people in hiring positions, are they more likely to be men themselves? I would not surprise me if that was true. If the administrators
in
making
nursing,
the hiring, I don't know. I don't know who does the hiring.
The supervisors and nurses would be older women.
Yeah, maybe.
I would think.
Yeah.
I don't know, but this is something else.
Yeah.
No, and there's another little story about the difference in how white men and black men are sentenced. Well, so, of course, black men get a lot stiffer sentences. Right. As a matter of fact, prison sentences of black men were nearly 20% longer than those of white men for similar crimes, and that's in recent years still.
Even though they have mandatory sentencing laws
that is an
precisely...
analysis by the U.S. Sentencing Commission.
Yeah.
That racial gap has widened since the Supreme Court restored judicial discretion in sentencing.
That's what it is. Okay. All right.
Well, now there you get... So So I just want to say, given all that, you white men who are feeling put upon, you know, you still somehow manage to do better than women, and you still do better than black men and black women. So you're still on top, even if you're feeling a little threatened. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Was he feeling guilty because he's a white man?
No. I noticed we're out of time, and I was just
hoping I'd shut up.
No. Never, Lynn. This is another can of worms that could have been open, but we'll just let it go.
All right, okay.
Tom Sokolowski wants us to know that Dorothy from Wizard of Oz is no hooker, but I think she would fall under the children.
Yes, Tom. She said
category.
Only children and
hookers. Yeah.
And Dorothy was a child.
Yes.
Well, I think we're done.
We are. Thanks. Will Tom be joining us tomorrow?
I believe so. Mr. Sokolowski will be here tomorrow.
Excellent.
We'll look forward to that. And thank you.
Always good to be here.
Mm-hmm. Toodaloo.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper, Steel City Media, and its advertisers.